And with the chime, good morning, everyone. It is 8 o'clock Mountain Time here in beautiful, I think it's going to be 90-degree Colorado weather. Welcome, everybody. This is the Food Safety Chat Live. I'm your host, Brian Armentrout, and I run the Food Leadership Group here in Colorado with my very special guest today, Austin Welch, who's also here in Colorado. He is the co-founder of Sage Media. How's your day going so far, my friend?
Going great. Going great. I'm loving the weather. Got the windows open here for the first half of the day.
Yeah, so if you're not from Colorado, that's kind of the game that we play here, right? Is this time of year, it's gorgeous at night, right? The temperatures come down, it's in the 50s. And so it's like, okay, how long can I go before I turn my air conditioning on, right? So this time of year is wonderful. Yeah, you open the windows up at night, the house cools down, you're all snuggled under the covers, and then in the morning you wake up and around 10-ish or so, you're like, all right, I got to close up the house. And so that's part of the fun we have here in Colorado with the weather. Also, though, unfortunately, this time in Colorado is peak hail season. So if you're not from this area, we can get some crazy hailstorms this time of year that just absolutely pummel your cars. And it's funny because this is kind of that field of innovation. And so Austin and I were talking before we got on here of people trying to find solutions for these type of things, right? So there's been all kinds of crazy things here in Colorado. I see people who have created car covers with pool noodles, right? So if they think that the hail's coming, they'll put this pool noodle thing on their car. I've also seen inflatable covers you can put on your cars to try and protect your cars from the hail. But if you're in the automotive repair business and dent removals, you have a steady business here in Colorado.
I've got some hail damage myself that I got to get fixed.
Yeah, and it's annoying, right? Because even if it's a little ding on the car, your eyes immediately go to it.
Yep.
But that's not why we are here. We are here as we are every Friday to talk about food safety. And so for 1 hour, we do a conversation with an expert relative to the latest kind of hot topics around food safety and what people are talking about. So this is meant, if you're new to this, to be an interactive discussion. This is not a PowerPoint presentation or things of this nature. This is your chance to really pick the brains of an expert and get some of your food safety questions answered. Because as we all know, food safety is not a point of competition. If you're manufacturing food, we're all in the same game, right? People generally know, for example, that infant formula. Oh my God, there was a big problem in infant formula. If you talk with most people, they probably don't know the companies. They know infant formula. They know that babies are at risk, and that's enough for the public, right? So you need to prepare for those things. One of the things that we love to do here in the morning, and some of our regulars like Tim, good morning, are already on the ball. So you guys are at it. Let us know where in the world you're at, because one of the things that you'll see here in the chat with the other people who are joining us for this, it's all over the world. And food safety is kind of one of these universal things that we're all interested in. So again, as I like to say, I applaud you for taking the time out to join us live and have this discussion around food safety. Now, at the end of this presentation, there's a couple of things that we're going to be bringing up here and putting a link in here for a really cool project that Austin's been working on that is finally launched, and I'm super excited about that. So the timing on this talk couldn't have been better. Plus, if you're watching this live, a freebie. Ooh, Brian's giving away a freebie. It must be he's in a weird mood, right? So stick around for that. If you're live, you'll have an opportunity for that as well. So good morning, Corey. Joe is here. Joe joined us last week. Oh my goodness, 102 degrees in the North Carolina area. So now, put on top of that, luckily here in Colorado, we don't have humidity, but where he's at, so high temperature and humidity. So good luck, Joe. Lance is here, 106. Boy, we're definitely starting to get into summer, aren't we? Jill's here. Good to see Jill up in Minnesota. Kim. And wow, this is great. I love this, guys. Thanks for putting this in. I always love this part of the show. This is always really fun. Seeing where everybody's at. Dr. Roy. I don't recognize Dr. Roy, somebody new to the show. So thank you for joining us. And here's a good example. So Nam La. Oh boy, I just absolutely slaughtered that name. I'm very, very sorry. So South Africa, a country I would love to visit. Never been there. I worked with in the food industry a operations guy who was from South Africa, and he used to tell some really cool stories. Nancy as well. So welcome everybody. So something that's really interesting here is food safety culture, right? And we talk about this a lot, and we keep seeing these type of things. And one of the things that Sage Media does is a lot of activity in these spaces around training and these type of things. So I think it's kind of a good place to start here, Austin, because we've got so many new people on here who don't know who you are. So can you kind of do a quick overview of Sage Media and what it is that you guys do?
Definitely. Yeah. So I'm Austin Welch. I'm a co-founder at Sage Media. And the easiest way I've found to explain what we do is it's kind of a hybrid between learning design, storytelling, and research and cognitive science. So we're kind of blending these three fields together to create training programs built with the goal of driving behaviors specifically. So what we see a lot within the training industry is a strong focus exclusively on knowledge, information, pass the test, prove that you know the thing. What we're seeing as a result of, just generations of food experience is that knowledge doesn't always equate to behavior. And so Sage Media tries to kind of bridge that gap between what people know and what people do. And so our focus exclusively is pretty much on food safety culture and what this actually means and how do we begin to analyze it, how do we begin to enhance it and improve the cultural and the behavioral and the belief aspects around food safety.
And you said something there that I wrote down because it was brilliant, is knowledge does not equal behavior, right? And if you assume that, man, that's a huge mistake. So thank you for that summary. And hi, Jill. Nice to see you as well. So part of anybody who's been on the show quite a bit knows that one of the things that I always do if I'm super excited about the topic, I want to jump in right away. And Austin has pulled up his coffee cup appropriately to say, Brian, we need our sip. So if you have a drink, guys, and you're out there, please join us for a sip of your favorite beverage. I got coffee. What you got there today, Austin?
Coffee, Ethiopian.
Ethiopian. I think mine is too. Yeah, there's a light roast blend that you can get through Costco, which is awesome. So I definitely love that. So, knowledge does not equal behavior, right? So part of this, right, is, I ran quality assurance in companies and I was out in the front lines teaching people in plants and things like this. And the model, Austin, has been the same forever, right? It's you get together a group of people, probably at the end of the shift. You have to beg and plead the supervisors to get them there. If you get 80% of the people, you're feeling thankful. You have to figure out how you're going to get the rest of them later, right? Because some of them are on vacation, some are sick, some just didn't show up. And you then stand in front of the class. And generally the attitude is kind of along this line. It's like, okay, guys, I'm Brian. I'm here for the refresher training on GMPs. I know everybody's tired. I get it. This isn't very long. I'm going to get through this pretty quick. But pay attention. There's a quiz at the end. You have to get at least 80% on the quiz. So if you don't, I'm going to make you retest it, and I don't want to do that either. So let's get through this, right? Yay, right? Who wouldn't be excited by that? I mean, it's like, oh, right? And these poor guys in the class, right? Let's say that you've been on sanitation all night, right? And you are just dog tired, right? You're wet, you're tired. You're in no condition to be accepting new information into your brain, right? You're just like, oh my God, I can't wait to get home and go to sleep, right?
And that kind of touches on one of the elements around creating the environment for food safety culture, right? That if you are hosting these trainings and these educations at the end of the shift when everyone's tired and then setting it up in that way, why would it be effective? And so part of the culture is asking yourself, well, how do we train people? What is the environment that we need to create that will actually get people excited about this, which gets into the whole other topic around motivation, which is a huge, kind of passion topic of mine. How do we access people's internal motivation as opposed to just these extrinsic motivators where it's like, well, do this or else.
Exactly. It's like, get you. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it sounds like a cliche, but right. If you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same results, right? And we've seen this in the food industry time and time and time again. And we were talking as we were preparing for this conversation, and Austin put a post out there on LinkedIn on this as well, is that we never learn our lessons in food safety, right? We're going through a gigantic recall with Jif peanut butter right now. It's like every day a new company who bought this peanut butter and put it in their products is recalling their product. And come to find out that this resident strain of salmonella has been in this production facility for over a decade, right? I mean, come on, what's going on? Did we not learn our lessons from Peanut Corporation of America? Why can't we connect the dots on this, Austin?
That is $1 million question right there. Why can't we? And this it gets back to what you and I were talking about the other day is, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to investigate the companies and find out the root cause. And so this is, going back to this concept around food safety culture and what it actually means. It means always doing the digging. You were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, right? I think a great idea is always don't set a standard for zero tolerance and then reward just off of the zero findings. Reward based on it's like, we're going to find 3 issues this month and let's go find them and neutralize them. And that's the measurement. So, but yeah, why those dots aren't connected between PCA and Jif? I mean, it's the exact same industry. It's the exact same product.
Exactly. And so for context around the comment that I made for everybody, right, is if you, let's say, for example, for your environmental monitoring program, the corporate executives say, okay, our goal in the plants is to have 0 positive environmental results. Yay, right? Everybody's bonuses are going to be based on this, and everybody's paycheck is going to be based on this. Well, guess what? You're going to get 0, right? Mm-hmm. And that means that people aren't going to look. And that means that people are shooting for the 0. They're not shooting to find and eradicate the issue, right? And so you're fooling yourself, right? It's like all negatives here. Good here, boss. Please give me my raise next year. And you have this festering time bomb that you think you don't have, and you do, and then it blows up in your face. And part of this, and definitely look up Austin's post on this on LinkedIn and put your comments in here on this after we do this, is the parallel that we were talking about was airlines, right? Airline safety, right? We all have heard the saying that, it's flying in an airplane is far safer than driving or these type of activities. Why is that, right? It was because of a deliberate action. And the National Transportation Safety Board, right, if there's a major issue, right, we see this all the time. So, Kobe Bryant tragically loses his life, and his daughter and the pilot and all these type of things happens in California. And everybody goes, oh my God, that's terrible. And then after the fact, later on, a report comes out from the NTSB on what happened and why that happened, and what it is that we need to do in the future to prevent these things from happening. And as a result, the incident rate and the fatalities and all these type of things in this industry have plummeted. And I don't know if you have that information handy or not, Austin, but it was really fascinating, the information you found on that.
Oh, the statistics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the NTSB was created in 1967, and back then the average crashes was 35 crashes for each 100,000 flight hours. Mm-hmm. And that number came down from 35 to around 5 per 100,000 hours. And the fatality rate plummeted as well. So, I mean, extremely effective organization, and the amount of rules that they put out, pre-flight checklist, what to do in the case of, XYZ emergency. And and you can even go onto YouTube and see flight instructors breaking down what they learned from, like you said, like Kobe Bryant crash or Sully crash, in the Hudson. And but they have that information to talk about, and we don't have that, which is really kind of frustrating that we don't have that access to that information. But within your own organization, you do have the capability to to do that. And that's, and that's the other thing we were talking about the other day, is that kind of Kaizen methodology. Like, part of food safety culture is finding true root causes and being inquisitive about what's going on within the organization. And anytime there's an issue that comes up, really getting to the true root cause of that. So when I think of like building food safety culture, part of it is being inquisitive, continually being inquisitive, and not being satisfied with like the first answer that comes to you. This is so much of what I do, because I don't have a background in micro or operations. Like, my background is in human behavior and training development and filmmaking. So the beauty of me coming into someone's plant is that I can ask all the really stupid questions that other people might not want to ask, but because I don't have that background, it's perfectly acceptable for me to ask these questions, which starts to expose some really interesting points where people are like, I don't know why we do it like that. I hadn't thought about it, because that was how I was taught, and that was how my teacher was taught. And so that, that consistent inquisitiveness and asking, what can we do better? How can we modify this? That's a big aspect of that culture, not being, sitting on your laurels, right? Continual improvement.
Right. Well, and that's a good point, right? And I refer to that as fresh eyes, right? A lot of times someone new with a fresh perspective going into a plant or talking with a company or things of this nature looks at things differently, because people get in habits, right? We're human beings, and part of our nature is to create routines and habits, right? And you do it at home when you get up in the morning, right? You follow the same routine, right? You shower and you brush your teeth and you make your eggs, and all these type of things remain the same, right? Because it's efficient and it becomes automatic. And it's the same in your work role, right? If you're the quality manager in a plant, you go in the morning, you open your emails, you get your cup of coffee, you check around with the rest of the team, you go to the staff meeting, maybe you go do a walk through the plant, these type of things, you answer some complaints or whatever it is within your routine. That just becomes part of what you do, right? And then at the end of the day, you go home and you're like, whew, okay, another one in the bag. But you're not really moving things forward. Notice too, the parallel here with the National Transportation Safety Board is an outside entity is going in and doing the investigation, right? It's not Boeing, right, who's leading the investigation. It's this outside entity with a fresh set of eyes and saying, okay, let's take a look at this. And let's run through the 5 whys and figure out why these things happen. And that's the huge disconnect in the food industry is, okay, we've had this giant issue with Jeff. We have lots of issues, not lots of issues, but lots of questions on the outside as to how this issue happened. Why did this happen? What got neglected? What wasn't being followed up on? Was there changes in management and they weren't aware or whatever, right? There's no follow-up, and it just kind of evaporates away. And there's no big report that comes out afterwards that says, okay, based upon what was found, here's the corrective actions and the root causes of the failures. So if I'm outside and I'm another peanut butter manufacturer company, I can look at that and say, oh, holy crap, that's a huge mistake. We need to look at our systems and make sure that we're not doing the same thing. That's the way food safety improves, just like in the airlines, right? And that's this huge disconnect. And I think this learning piece of it, what Sage Media does, is a huge chunk of that.
Yeah, and one of the things that you were just talking about is bringing in that outside set of eyes, and that's so much of what we do is coming in and asking all those new questions that. Traditionally, because it's a, so I come from a background before I worked in, the food industry way back, I started in marketing and advertising, and then moved into video production, and then moved into learning design, and then kind of found myself in the food industry after a few years. And there's so many different aspects that we're looking at when looking at these failures. And I can almost guarantee that 99% of the time when we do these root cause analysis processes, that behavior, it's always a behavior that drove some type of issue, a behavior or a lack of a behavior. Right. And this is something we talk about a lot within food safety culture, is creating a culture of people speaking up. And there's a fascinating aspect around why people don't speak up, right? Because you can walk around a plant and see signs that says, see something, say something, right? But there's a reason that people don't say something. And there's psychological reasons, there's sociological reasons, like just from an anthropology viewpoint, we keep the peace for the most part. And so speaking up is seen as a risk. It's a risk to my job. It's a risk to my social status, right, amongst my peers. So, getting in and understanding the aspect of why people don't speak up, to me, is a crucial element of that food safety culture. Because you can't just tell somebody to do something. They have to, really be able to process and have that metacognition around it. And so when we're looking at, food safety culture, I think a lot of it comes back to that critical thinking and metacognition, understanding why I do what I do, or why I haven't done what why in the past I didn't do this certain thing. But I can almost guarantee that Jif, when it comes back to it, it's going to be, it's going to be a laundry list of behaviors or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm. Well, we never had a problem before, right? How many times do we hear that? I think really, right? So I want to kind of, before we dive into more details on this, is bring this back up to the 30,000 foot level, which is part of what I have noticed, right, is that people who work in the field that we work in, so quality assurance, food safety, these type of things, are technical people, right? And I'm a technical person, right? I started off in microbiology and all these type of things, right? And you develop these skill sets of doing things, right? Like engineers and things like this. And what I talk about a lot, and what a lot of other people are starting to talk about more too, is the people side of things. And there's this false belief that if you show someone the data, because you think in terms of data, right? If you show them the control chart, if you show them the trend analysis, if you show them the CPKs, that they're going to go, oh yes, I totally understand now, and this makes sense to me, and I will now modify my behavior accordingly to meet these new parameters. No, right? A critical skill, if you want to advance in your career in a technical field, is to move beyond that, right? Look at senior leadership in companies. Right? Their skill set is not about the technical aspects of what they do. It's about the relationships of what they do, right? So you may be the CFO, but if you want to get things done in the company, you still have to be able to talk to the other groups in the organization, explain to them why those numbers matter. And it's exactly the same in quality. You have to be able to talk outside of your comfort zone, right? And be able to communicate that information. And if we think, again, that simply putting a PowerPoint slide in front of a group of people is going to accomplish that, it's no wonder we're not getting anywhere.
Right. And that's why, that's really why we use the methodology that we do at Sage is we leverage stories and films. At the heart of what I do is filmmaking and creating curriculum around these stories and these films. But if we're going to communicate these points, then we look for these global humanistic elements. And so like Dr. Roy Haywood, man, that is a powerful quote. Keep the peace fills the coffins. Yeesh.
Damn.
Dropping bombs there, man. But that's exactly it. And so looking at, okay, well, how can I create a story that proves that keeping peace fills coffins? And that's what I want to show and prove to my team. But yeah, because what we're talking about ultimately is saving lives and finding a way to make sure that stays top of mind in everything that we do, whether I'm on the front line or whether I'm in human resources or finance or mergers and acquisitions, sales. All of us make these decisions every day that can affect food safety. And, if you come into a company and the culture is basically like, well, we don't speak up or we don't bring things up, then what, Dr. Haywood has here is a great little pithy statement around, well, here's what happens if you don't. And this is why we don't do it that way. And then continually reinforce that. But that is, but it's an emotional laden statement. And that's what we need because we make decisions, whether, I can provide the science on it because I know some people will want to argue this, but we make these decisions based on emotion. 95% of our how we make decisions is based on emotion, and then we rationalize it with logic.
Yeah.
So this is old sales tricks, right? They talk about sell the sizzle, not the steak, right? The sizzle is what makes you actually want to buy the thing, and then we justify it with the logic. That's the exact same way we make these decisions every single day.
Oh my God, that is so important. I'm glad you brought that up, right? It's how car salespeople work, right? It's benefits versus features. That's like one of the leading rules in marketing, right? Is don't list out the features. Tell them why the features are important. Tell them the benefits, right? Mm-hmm. So, hi, Austin. Welcome to the car dealership. What are you looking for? Oh, yeah, I'm looking for this type of thing. It's like, okay, well, you plan to have any fun in this car? Oh, gosh, I'd love to have some fun in this car. You know what you need is a convertible. With the wind in my hair. Oh, my God. Right? And you start picturing yourself in that. And the salesperson will start asking questions like, so if you had a color choice, would you like red or blue? Oh, no, definitely red. Red is so sexy. Oh, my God, I want the red. Right? And you become invested in that decision. And you are 100% right. And I'm so glad you brought that up. We make decisions based on emotion. And then we use logic to justify that decision. Well, gosh, if I get that new car, then I drive that to work and my boss is going to see that and go, oh, wow, boy, he's really successful. He's really coming up in the role. Maybe I should consider him for that promotion or whatever, right? And that's this trap of what I talked about earlier with technical people. We think it's the other way around, right? All we have to do is present the facts and then the emotion will fall. No. Right?
Knowledge does not equal behavior.
No.
And that emotion, and that's where we get into the tricky elements of what culture is really about. It's the psychology, the sociology, it's the cognitive science aspects. It's the stuff that I am deeply, deeply interested in, but a lot of people in the food industry might not be super interested in, which is the the underpinnings of motivation, of behavior, of interaction within teams and how all of that works. And those are the elements that's the big bridge that kind of makes that all that knowledge translate into the behavior.
Now, is this what you're kind of talking about when you're talking about design thinking as kind of a big bucket? Does that fit?
Yeah. So when I talk about design thinking around this topic, it's really about, so a lot of the work that I do, before even creating a learning program or a training film or anything like that, is to sit down with the client, because a lot of times clients will come and they say, we want to improve food safety culture. Well, that is a massive massive ask, and there's a lot of buckets that fall under food safety culture. And you can look at the GFSI position paper, and they've broken it out in 5 different pillars, and then within each of those 5 pillars, they have different topics, which is great because it kind of provides a little bit of a framework for how to look at this. But what my first step is to come in and do some some consulting and find out, what does food safety culture actually mean to you? What does it mean to your team? It's getting into elements around, qualitative data and collection and analysis as opposed to just quantitative. So when we talk about design thinking, it's coming in and looking at it from, a humanistic aspect. So who is our audience? What are the specific elements that are missing? Really finding that root cause. And that's, it's a big element, and it's something we do with every single project. And what I've been trying to start to teach people how to do is creative problem solving. As a lifelong creative, I've worked in the creative industry my entire life. I've had to create a craft around it. I've had to create process so that I can be creative at the drop of a hat, and not just wait for the muse to strike. And part of that process of creative problem solving is to think of as many potential risks and solutions as I possibly can. And then asking myself, and then asking the team, who are we working for? Who are we trying to deliver this information to? What are the specific issues at play? And so part of that design thinking process is, meeting with, executive leadership, meeting with all the different team members that are part of the Food Safety Culture Coalition, which hopefully that's in place, and if not, then we help them kind of put that together as well.
Mhm.
But then going out in man on the street interviews, right? Go and start talking to people and finding out, and this is where the rubber meets the road, because now you get the straight shoot from the plant managers, the frontline folks, quality, safety. We start to get all of this, and then we start to look for themes. And this is what I love about qualitative research, is that we're looking for themes, and there will always be a theme that emerges, always. You just got to look for it, and that's what I love. So so design thinking is really taking this, instead of just looking at what I think you need, and instead saying, okay, well, let's go talk to everybody and find out what they need specifically. What are the issues? I'm not going to make any assumptions here.
Yeah.
Let's go and actually do the research and find out what exactly is the issue. If we're having an issue that people aren't speaking up, let's find out why they're not speaking up. If we're having an issue where, one department specifically, mergers and acquisitions, keeps buying, shanty companies that are affecting our safety score, and not doing their due diligence, let's find out what's going on there. If sales keeps overpromising and, we're not able to meet the safety requirements, let's find out why they're doing that. Right? If HR keeps hiring the wrong people, let's address that. So when we talk about food safety culture, it's such a broad topic that we got to really narrow it down.
Right, exactly. Right. And so one of the failures with this technical mindset is this false belief that if you write something down, people will do it. And I call this Moses coming from the mountain, right? We think that it's like, okay, I'm the quality manager and people are doing something I don't like. All I got to do is write up a procedure and give it to everybody and they're going to do it, right? So I come down from the mountaintop with the tablets and declare what needs to be done. And people are like, yeah, whatever, right? And it doesn't get done. And the response a lot of times is to create more documents, right? And so learn your lesson. So as an example of that, right, is again, right, it's the people side of things. If you go and talk with the procurement team and say, let's talk about food safety and how food safety impacts your job and how you do things. Please tell me about that. And the head of procurement goes, what are you talking about, Austin? No, I buy stuff, right? It's those yokels over in food safety. It's their job to make sure that the product is safe. Why are you bothering me with that, right? If that's the answer, you're like, oh, hello. I found something really important here. This company takes a siloed approach to these activities. I'm in procurement, stay out of my lane. I'm in R&D, I'm in quality, I'm in legal, I'm in communications, right? And they view that as that's the only thing that they're supposed to do. They don't look at that as a team activity. And you can write all the procedures in the world about food safety culture, and it hits that procurement vice president's desk, and he's like, yeah, whatever, right? Well, yeah. This has nothing to do with me. Why are they bothering me? Right? And that's where you understand that, you're hosed, right? You're not going to make any progress.
Yeah, and that's where these stories really come into play. We were doing work for Hershey a few years ago, and as we were creating this training film for them, the procurement was specifically a department that they wanted to address. And so looking at how we go about purchasing new machinery and what are the elements that we're looking at, and are we cutting costs? So we look at the cantaloupe issue in Colorado a few years back, right? They purchased potato washers in the hopes that it would properly clean cantaloupe, and it didn't. That was a procurement issue right there.
Right. And a lot of times, in my past experience running quality in companies, I would be visiting one of my plants and I'm walking through and I'm like, what's that? It's like, oh yeah, it's a piece of whiz bang equipment we bought. We got it really super cheap on the secondary market. And I'm going, oh.
There's a deal on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. Has the food safety team reviewed and evaluated this equipment before you bought it? What? No, they're food safety. We buy equipment, right? They're not connecting. They're not connecting the dots, right? Pay me now, pay me later, right? And that's what happened with the cantaloupe.
Yeah. And so I mean, looking at when we talk about this concept of culture, I mean, it's this intricate web of everybody placing food safety is that's the thing I do, regardless of which department I'm in. This is what I do. I make sure that the food is safe.
Right. And so a lot of times I think part of this failure, right, is so we're used to audits. We're used to these type of programs, right? We saw this with FSMA. FDA wanted to go down this path and they realized they couldn't. Is we want to create checklists, right? And then give a score and say, okay, we're 98% compliant with food safety culture, according to my checklist.
Right.
Right. Doesn't work that way. Now, part of the tools that we were talking about a little bit too when we were preparing this was SWOT analysis. So how can you use a SWOT analysis in this application?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, the SWOT analysis is the quickest and the easiest and the most accessible way to start assessing food safety culture within a company. There's many different ways to assess it, but looking at a SWOT analysis within your specific department. So, and for those who aren't familiar with the term SWOT, it's basically an activity where you go through and you look at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats within a company, an organization, a culture, your department, your specific role. And so really what we do is we try to run people through a SWOT analysis for their specific role in the company. So once again, if I'm finance, how do I look at those strengths and those weaknesses within the organization that I need to improve, that I could build upon the strengths or leverage those strengths. And then what are those weaknesses that might be coming up that I need to really start to work on? The opportunities obviously is what opportunities are out there that I haven't quite taken advantage of yet. And then the threats are those external elements, right? So, Jif right now is suffering from a lot of external threats. They have a recall, but those threats are also, the PR is going to be horrible. They're already attaching a $125 million price tag to the Jif recall. That does not include the lawsuits that are going to be coming down the line. That does not include the bad PR. They're going to have to rebuild that name. They're going to have to, and then there's going to be a lot of other financial hits. So I would say, triple that number basically for overall market share.
Which always goes back to, right, something that we constantly hear in food safety is, oh, well, geez, these type of things cost money, right? The really, right?
Let me show you what really costs money.
Right. Yeah. So how much money does a plane crash cost? Right. Right. So these opportunities are all over the place, and using these skills to develop that is super important. Right. And in the world we're in now, right, the memes fly fast and furious. And it's only a matter of time before, everybody knows Jif's tagline, right? Choosy mothers choose Jif, right? I can only imagine what's going to happen with that.
Oh, the memeage that is going to come out of that. I mean, it's going to, the internet is ruthless, brutal, and consistent.
Mm-hmm. And good commentary is always based in truth, right? So Jif is going to pay a price for this for a long time.
Yeah. And so that's the thing with the SWOT analysis. I mean, that the writing should have been on the wall, that like, this is a ticking time bomb that we have here.
Yeah. And so part of this too is with companies, what I've seen is they kind of break into a couple of different groups in my experience in consulting. Is companies that haven't had a recall, and they have this false belief, Austin, that it'll never happen, right? They look at past results and extrapolate future results and say, no, we're fine. We've never had a problem before. It's all good. Well, then something happens. And then the company becomes true believers, right? And now all of a sudden, all the different groups within the organization understand the importance of food safety, right? The finance guys look at it and go, oh my gosh, look at how much money we're losing as a result of this. And the sales guys go, oh, we're losing customers because of this, right? And the consumer affairs group goes, look at the mountain of complaints we've got. And the legal group, right, to the comment from Corey here, right, is, Bill Marler's lining up the lawsuits, right? And all of a sudden, everybody gets it. And so part of this, right, is why didn't you understand this in the first place?
And I would even do an exercise that I was just thinking of and say, okay, well, let's peg a number to what a recall would cost us. And now let's put that number as an imaginary line item on the budget, and any investment that falls under, we'll say 50% underneath that number is worth it, because of the fact that it's going to save us that. So if Jif had said, okay, a recall would cost us $125 million, what investment needs to be made to ensure that doesn't happen? I mean, because then at that point, the investment doesn't seem like lost money. It's an investment in preventing this specific thing.
Right. Yeah. Why do companies invest in sanitation equipment? Why do companies invest in all of these type of things? Right. It's to prevent those things from happening. And that's brilliant, right? If you learn one thing from this conversation this morning, guys, it's what Austin just said. How can you make these numbers real so that senior executives understand that? Let's go back to the car salesman analogy, right? Okay, senior executives, let's picture this. We've had a recall, and it's going to cost us $100 million. What does that mean to the company, right? And all of a sudden, they're making that emotional connection in their brains and saying, oh my gosh, if that happens, right? We're making people sick, people's families, people's children, maybe my children, right? I have this products in my home, and oh my gosh, right? All of our retailers are mad at us, and the consumers are mad. We probably have legal action coming in. Okay, Bill over in legal, what do you think of that? And Bill in legal is going, oh geez, if we had these type of lawsuits, here's what's going to happen to our company. And then the CFO goes, yeah, we're probably, if that happens, we're going to have to do a write down relative to brand, because now our brand is worth less, and we can't count that on the line items. So now our stock price is going to plummet. And based upon that, it's going to take us 10 years to recover, right? Now, all of a sudden, they're thinking about these things, right? And it's not abstract. And I think that's a huge point you just made, is that this concept of a recall, if a company hasn't gone through it, isn't real. It's something that happens to other companies, right? It's kind of like when you drive by a car wreck. You're like, I never get in a car wreck. And then you drive by a car wreck, and what's everybody do? They slow down, right? You're like, oh, right. You're kind of looking and going, oh, geez, right? And you're putting yourself in those poor people's position and saying, oh, geez, I hope everybody's okay. And, should I stop? Should I help? Oh, no. Okay, there's the ambulance. Okay, everybody's okay. Shoo, right?
Crisis averted. 5 minutes later,
you're back to your same
5 miles an hour.
Back to your same behavior, right?
Well, and Kimberly brought something up here that actually I was going to kind of dovetail into. She said, is there a mathematical way to calculate prevention? And this is something that I've been wanting to find out. So I'm actually inviting everybody here today do you have any suggestions or recommendations? Because something I've always wanted to do is find a way to create some type of calculator to figure out what a specific company's financial risk is, right? Because we look at, the average recall cost and what it's like a $35 million, like, is that I think that's the number that I've seen consistently. It's like the average cost, but that number doesn't mean anything. If I run a company that has 5 million in sales, $35 million recall, I'm like, that doesn't apply to me. There's no way. So I need to get a real tangible number, because if you say, well, a recall would cost you $450,000. And it's like, okay, that makes sense to me now. I did this I worked on anti-harassment for a while, anti-harassment training. And it's the exact same concept. It's that we're trying to measure what the cost would be if it happens, and then what the savings is if it doesn't. And thankfully there's a lot, just like in the airline industry, there's a lot more research available around harassment and the cost of it. So I was able to build out a calculator where it's like, okay, based on what state you're in, the amount of employees you have, and then you go through this questionnaire to assess your overall risk, it'll give you a rough figure of like, here's all the different departments that will receive some type of financial hit. I would love to be able to do that for the food industry, but I don't know how. I don't have access to the data. So if anybody out there feels up to the challenge, send me an email, right? It's hard to do.
It is, isn't it? It takes a while to get used to it.
At Austin at Sage.media, because I would love to find out how to build something like that to make it more tangible and real to that person's company.
Right.
Because just using random statistics, it's just a number. The number makes no sense. But if I can attach it to my process, my operation, then it gives it a lot more gravitas.
Right. Now think of this, guys. Which is more impactful in your organization? We'll stick on the sexual harassment topic, right? A few PowerPoint slides that say, last year in the United States, sexual harassment lawsuits cost company an average of $1 million per incident. You can avoid this in your company, right? Okay, whatever, right? And versus this, right? Hi, my name's Bob. I used to be a high-powered executive working for a major company. I used to be, right? I thought I was being nice. I thought complimenting people was the right thing to do. I didn't even think that this would impact them. And I didn't realize the damage I did until I lost my job and I lost my income and I lost my house because of a lawsuit. Let me tell you what I did wrong, right? Which is more powerful, right? Mm-hmm. As human beings, we're driven by stories, right? It's why we go to movies. It's why we watch TV shows, right? We don't go and sit down for a Star Wars movie and watch a PowerPoint of the various fleet sizes of the Empire versus the Rebel. No, who cares, right? Who cares, right? We want to see the conflict between Darth Vader and Luke and, oh my God, he's his son and all these type of things, right? We're following the story and that hero arc and what they learn and how they grow, right? We have to evolve to that. And the examples are everywhere, but for whatever reason, food safety, right? We're not, it's not making the connection.
Well, and that's one of that's where, storytelling also creates this opportunity to open up the opportunity for people to own and invest in their own reality and how it applies to them. So going back to anti-harassment training, I spent years researching this because I was fascinated with it. I was like, why is it so ineffective? Why is it so horrible? Why do people hate it so much? And there was a lot of things that really came out of it. And this came back into the behavioral economics and the psychology of how anti-harassment training was built. And so what I wanted to do is take a completely different tack and say, well, instead of talking about, because there's research out there that says as soon as you start talking about the law, people check out because we have a natural intuition to say, don't tell me what to do. Right. It's whether you feel it's childish or immature, but that is don't infringe upon my autonomy, even if it's not something I don't want to do. Like if I went into an anti-harassment training, I'm not planning on harassing somebody, but it's like, but there's an element in our brain that says, don't tell me what to do. Yeah. And so what I wanted to do was say, okay, well, let's look at how we can approach this from a position where we're looking at it as a way to improve relationships within the workplace, to improve your teamwork and how you work with people. So as opposed to punitive, what's the advantage of this? And how will it make you a better leader? How can it make a better team? And specifically, around that topic of harassment was creating bystander intervention, right? How do we get people to speak up when they see something? It completely ties into food safety culture, which is how do we get people to speak up when they see something? It's all about speaking up. And because going back to the beginning of the conversation, in 99% of these recalls, there is a behavioral issue, either a lack of behavior or a specific behavior that led to this issue. So how do we start to address those behaviors?
Exactly. And so a couple good comments here. So my friend Wanda did a food safety culture, right? So she said that they understood food safety, but they lacked overall training, right? So to your point, so they understood the concept, but they didn't understand the execution, right? If I see something, what do I do, right?
So that's really interesting because a lot of what we do on the front end is assessing. Do we have an education problem? Do people not know the thing? Do we have a skill problem, which is different? In Wanda, it sounds like it's a skill problem, right? They knew the things, but they lacked the training or the skill set. And then also sometimes we look at it and it's an environmental issue, right? Sometimes just the environment is not conducive to food safety. You were talking about this a few weeks ago, the way that the environment is designed, and you have, this machinery sitting on these, lifts, and then, it creates this environment where there's always going to be, it's a breeding ground for, listeria or salmonella or some other issue. So it's like, well, the people know this stuff. They've been well trained. They have the skill, they have the education, they have the skill, but their environment is not allowing them to truly embrace the food safety culture the way that we're wanting to. So
yeah, exactly. Or even worse, right? The employee notices something and tells his boss, and the boss says, keep going. Right? Now the message has been taught, shut up, right? Shut up and do your job. I don't want to hear it, right? And that hidden failures in the company, right? Those things fester, and you never know where they're going to go. Barbara here made a very interesting statement here. We actually played Paul Cruz's statement to his Bluebell associates at a plant meeting for our company. Now, the Bluebell case, if you're not familiar with it, this is something I follow very closely. And by the way, so Renee will put a link in here. I have a locals group where I post information around food safety. I'll also post for members some videos and stuff like that, but the base level on this is free. So it doesn't cost you anything. Join this list every, twice a week or so. I'll send out information on this. So Paul Cruz was the CEO of Bluebell Ice Cream when the listeria issue happened at multiple plants within their company, right? And he is now currently being prosecuted personally, not as a representative of the company. He is being prosecuted as the actions he took for the CEO by the Department of Justice. And so I read in a recent story that I'll post on Locals here later today, that they're getting ready to move toward the trial and putting together the jury and these type of things. So this thing's moving forward. So those type of messages, right, like from somebody who is directly impacted with this, who is running an organization, I would love to see what was said in that message.
Yeah, Barbara, I would love to see that as well. I haven't heard about that, the specific statement to the Bluebell Associates. So I would love to hear that, because that case in and of itself is fascinating, both from a micro standpoint, of how the listeria found its way in there and continued to proliferate in that environment, to the specific consumer that was being affected by it, to the culture within that's an insane case study right there.
Right. Exactly. Well, and again, it parallels back to the airline crash scenario, right? It's never just one thing that caused an airline crash, right? It's a combination of factors. It's mechanical error, it's pilot error, it's weather, all of these type of things, right, combine to create the elements that then create the crisis and the tragedy. And you need to be able to unravel those things. So part of what, and we're getting toward the end of our talk, unfortunately, because this is just fascinating stuff, is the timing on this couldn't have been better, because you're getting ready to do a class, right?
Yeah. I've been really excited to launch this and announce it. So Sage Media partnered up with the Center for Foodborne Illness Research and Prevention, which is housed out at the Ohio State University. So Barbara Kowalczyk is kind of the head of that organization. And we teamed up together to create a day-long food safety culture design workshop. So really, it's taking what I've learned over the past 5 years working specifically on this topic of food safety culture and creating these large-scale global initiatives for companies around food safety culture. And then obviously their extensive knowledge and research over at the center, over at the Ohio State University, and creating this day-long course that really dives into a lot of what we talked about today, which is design thinking, creative problem solving, really getting into the heart of what is culture, both from a general, organizational background. So looking at Edgar Schein's work around organizational culture, and then how that ties into food safety culture, how to build a food safety culture coalition team, which is, when we look at John Cotter's work around change management, building the team is really kind of a critical aspect of not going at this alone. And then ultimately, by the end of the workshop, having, we talked about the SWOT analysis specifically for your role within the organization, and then creating a game plan that you can begin to execute immediately. Because that's the biggest thing for me is what are the actual tangible actionable items that each one of us can start to address within our own little fiefdom, our own world that we have. And because, be the change you want to see, right? So start to lead by example and start to do these things. So our inaugural event is going to be on August 4th out in Pittsburgh. So it's going to be the day after the conclusion of the IAFP conference. We're limiting it to about 30 people because we want to be able to give, kind of hands-on approach to this. And then, so it'll be myself, my business partner, Richard Fleming, and then Gina Kramer. If any of y'all know Gina, she's used to be a consultant and then moved into academia a few years ago. But yeah, and then there might be a link for the enrollment page somewhere around there.
Renee put that in there. So in the comment section, Renee put the link in for the course. And so, yeah, I mean, really good point, Austin, right? So if you learn something new and you don't apply it, what's the point, right? You need to take action.
And that was really the catalyst for creating this, because what I noticed over the past few years, we've been talking about what food safety culture is and why it's important, but it's like, let's let's get to it and start, here's how we can get started and take those first few steps in moving this forward. And that's really what this workshop is about, is translating the why into like the how. Here's how we're going to do it.
Great, right? Yeah, there's nothing better than sitting down at a course. You're not distracted. You're one-on-one with the, you can ask questions of the instructor. And importantly too, because there's other people in the class, you get to interact with them and see how they're approaching these things, right? And you can take that back and begin implementing that in your company. So that's super important. And piggybacking this on with the conference, right? Conferences are starting up again. We're getting more attendance. Is great, right? Now you don't have to pay for the airfare. That's already taken care of. You get, one more night of a hotel room. That's about it. So the cost for this is fantastic. So yeah, putting this with the conference is really smart. Plus then you're in the right mindset because you've gone to the conference and you're thinking about these things. It's the perfect time to do it. So definitely, right? So, very limited, right? Course is filling up, guys. If you're going to be at this conference, get one of those seats there. Highly recommended. As you can tell during this conversation, right? Austin knows what he's talking about. So it's going to be an amazing course. So I'm really happy to let people know about it.
Thank you.
God, yeah, time's almost gone here. A couple of closeout notes and one other thing that I promised here for the live stream. So the second one is that this live stream is sponsored by my friends over at EAS Consulting. So they work with people like me and other individuals who have, decades of experience in the food industry, helping people accelerate their growth, right? So one of the themes that comes through this food safety, chat that we do is that don't try to do all this stuff on your own, right? There's tons of expertise out there that can accelerate your growth and learning and get you to that next level of food safety, right? So that you don't have issues in your company. So go to easconsultinggroup.com, check out their website. There's some training courses on there as well. And if you use the code Bryan, BRYAN, in checkout, they give you 15% off for watching. So thanks, EAS. I really appreciate that. And the other thing here for the conference, one of my clients who makes amazing products, Ripple Foods, RIPPLE foods.com, gave me some coupons for some free products. So if you're one of the first on the live stream only, right? If you're one of the first 5 people who send an email. So again, right? So see if I can do it. Here's my email. So the only thing that's missing here at the end is the .com. So barmantrout@foodleadership.com. Fire me an email. I will send you a couple of coupons for some free products. So Ripple makes plant-based beverages that use PEA protein. And so they make some fantastic products. So I'm really happy to work with them and I want to kind of get the word out. So this was an amazing way to do it and get it out there for my supporters here on the Food Safety Chat. So just fire me that email and then I'll get those in the mail to you. So first 5. So it's part of the thank you for taking the time in investing in food safety and spending your Friday morning an hour with Austin and myself. So we really appreciate that. So any closing thoughts, Austin?
No, go forth, do good. I would say reach out to me for any recommend. So I'm an avid book reader, and that's something that I'm continually finding ways to synthesize all these different books together. So if you'd like any resources, research papers, anything, questions around food safety culture or this nebulous thing that is called human behavior, feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to share resources.
So thank you for our regulars on Friday. We love having you here, and we appreciate your commitment. For the new individuals who joined us this Friday, thank you to you as well. So, I mean, yeah, Dr. Haywood, man, you're knocking it out of the park with your comments here. Thank you. This is helping to contribute to food safety, right? Because again, food safety is not a point of competition. We're all in this together, right? So the more that we all learn and we can prevent mistakes that were made in the past, the better we're all going to be. So with that, we'll close out our chat for today. And again, right, we will be back here next Friday at the same time with a new guest, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time here on LinkedIn and YouTube. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us, and we will see you next Friday. Austin, my friend, have a great weekend.
You too.
Everybody, you have one too. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.